The J. Michael Show.
Welcome to today's show. Our guest today is a wonderful actress and anchor from CNN, and now she's a real estate agent. Let's meet Andrea Thompson. Andrea, hello.
Hi, how are you, Jay?
Doing good, doing good, doing good. I want to talk about your career and everything that, we change careers a lot often. We switch from one career to the other. You've been a model, you've been an actress, you've been a real estate agent, you've been an anchor for CNN. Where do we begin? I mean, where do we start talking about this? Let's go back to when you were a model. Tell me about being a model.
I think first I would, if I could just briefly address changing careers.
Yeah.
I think we almost have to these days. It's not the days for our parents and our grandparents where you were with a company for your lifetime, then you got a pension at the end.
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different deal now. We have to keep inventing ourselves, especially as the technology moves on.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, by the way, you and I have a mutual friend, Vanessa Angel, who she said you took a class with in the 80s, and she said to send you her best.
Oh, she's wonderful. She's a wonderful person.
Yeah, she is precious. Okay, well, let's go back to modeling. You started out as a teenager model, right?
Yeah, in Florida, in South Florida. There was an agency owned by a woman by the name of Irene Marie,
Mm-hmm.
who had been herself a model in Europe and in New York. You know what? I don't even know. Somebody recommended that I give her a call, and mostly swimwear. I mean, it's not like I was ever going to be a big time model. I'm 5'8". In those days, it was like all, well, and it still is in some respects, 5'10", 5'11", tall and skinny. I was never that girl.
Yeah.
Never that girl. So, I did some modeling. I did swimwear, activewear, lingerie, and a lot of catalog work. But,
right.
It was like I was in the grunt field of modeling,
Yeah. But you grew up in Dayton, Ohio, right? You said
I
Florida.
did until. Yeah. Well, I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio until I was 9, and then my family moved to Melbourne, Australia,
Mm-hmm.
and then we moved to Florida after that.
Yeah, you have moved around a lot, the entire world, right?
Yeah, I really have, and a lot of that, in the beginning was with my parents,
Mm-hmm.
but after that, I've lived in quite a few places, except I was in LA for 30 years, and
Yeah.
kind of asking myself why I stayed that long. But I've moved around a lot. I'm here in Mexico now for 7 years, but I don't see that changing. I don't plan to leave.
Yeah. Well, you were, of course, there in Los Angeles. You were in Hollywood. What made you decide to go into real estate?
I had a baby at the age of 45.
Ah.
And, prior to that, I had my oldest son, Alec, who's 32 now. And he was raised by 2 shifts of nannies. And there were also the practicalities of the business. I was 45 years old in a business that mostly prizes younger people, not just younger women, but I would say younger people. So I thought, well, let me be practical about this. And went out, got my real estate license, and that's what I've done for the last 20 years.
It's interesting that you're a real estate agent in Mexico. Robin Curtis, mm-hmm. who was Lieutenant Savick on Star Trek, she's a real estate agent in New York.
Okay.
Nikki DeBoer, who was Dax on Deep Space Nine, she's a real estate agent, I think, in Los Angeles now. So it's interesting to see that actresses apparently gravitate towards that kind of work. Is that
I think we're all used to being independent contractors anyway, and that's what you are when you're a real estate agent. It's about you going out and hustling for your own work.
Mm-hmm.
and, and never having a boss. So maybe that's part of it. I never wanted to have a boss. And
Yeah.
so, and I always believed in the word job meant just over broke.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I like to be out on my own. That's for sure.
But you studied acting in New York. Tell me about the beginnings of your acting career.
You know what, like a lot of actors, I started out waiting tables and going to acting school, which is where I met Vanessa. I studied with Warren Robertson, and that's where I met Vanessa. And then later I became a member of the Actors Studio. But, I slogged through a lot of years of, commercial auditions and, television auditions, theater auditions before anything really started happening for me, I guess, around my early 23, 24. But, I'd spent 4 years hitting the ground before that.
Yeah, you're probably pretty much known for Babylon 5, NYPD Blue, and your stint on CNN. We're going to get to CNN in a moment, but
Jag too. There's some Major League Jag fans out there.
I know. But let's talk about your role on Babylon 5, one of my favorite shows. How did that come about?
I auditioned for the role of Ivanova initially, and didn't hear anything back. And right after the audition, I went home. I didn't feel well. I had a horrible case of the flu. I think I was out of it for about a week. Um, and when I was, up and around again, I get a call from my agent. He said, "You have the job playing Talia Winters." And I said, "Who's Talia Winters?" He said, "It's that audition you went on for Babylon 5." And I'm like, "I don't know who Talia Winters is. Can you send it over to me?" He goes, "Well, they made an offer and they want you to join the show." I'm like, "Great. I just, let me find out a little more about the character." Because oftentimes when you're auditioning, you're not getting the entire script. You get seen specifically for the character that you were submitted for. So I didn't audition for Talia. I auditioned for Ivanova, but I got Talia, which was really cool on many fronts because Claudia was fantastic in the role, and I really enjoyed playing Talia. So
Yeah. And from there, you moved on to NYPD Blue, right?
from Babylon 5, no, to Jag.
To Jag.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so did you leave the show to go to Jag, or did your character just simply pass away or go away, and so now you needed a new job?
Well, no, it's the realities of Hollywood. I mean, actors are like anybody else. They've got a mortgage to pay, house needs a new roof, baby needs new shoes, got to buy groceries because kids like to eat, right?
Yeah,
So on Babylon 5, I was guaranteed a certain number of episodes, but not a steady paycheck. So I could work and then not work for 6 episodes. And so during that period of time, you're not earning.
right.
And so for me, I felt that that I would have a better shot again out on the open market. I mean, it was a great show. I really enjoyed my time there, but again, it was the economics of it, the practicalities of it.
Were you happy with the way the character went out of the show?
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I was glad to be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, as I recall, you were a subconscious memory or something was triggered, and then you kind of
Right.
completely changed. Here's a
Right.
question that fans are going to want
People
me to,
tell you.
yeah, fans will want me to ask you. You and Ivanova, were the two of you a thing?
Well, yeah. I mean, they did make that a thing. I mean, I remember going to set one day, and one of the members of the crew said, "Oh, by the way, your character's gay." And I'm like, "Really? I had no idea my character was gay." They had said, "Yeah, they're writing in the storyline. Your character's gay." So Jay Michael comes onto the set, and I go, "Hey, I heard my character's gay," and he goes, "No, actually, you're bisexual." I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that's cool." It didn't matter to me one way or the other. It was just another facet of the character. So, they had this thing set up, but because of, this was the early 90s. And the censors were still very much it's not like today. It's the Wild West on TV today. You can put anything you want on TV today.
Yeah.
But then the censors still had, a big hand in it all. And so I wasn't allowed to kiss the girl. I'm like, well, then why are you guys telling this storyline?
Right.
If I don't get to kiss the girl, I mean, if it was a white dude and a white woman, then I'd be kissing the guy, right?
Right.
So I said, are you just doing this to create buzz for ratings, or are you actually going to honor this relationship? But, there was no way that Warner was going to let that go by. So.
Right. So there never was a scene where the two of you kissed.
No. It was just like, we had gotten out of the shower. Our hair was wet. We were wearing silk nightgowns. And then it cuts to the next morning, and I'm in bed, and I reach across for Ivanova, but nobody's there. So, yeah. I mean, it was very obviously insinuated, but nothing actually ever happened on camera.
Yeah. Were you okay with that too? I mean, as far as the script, when you got it and they told you that your character is gay, you're okay with it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah. Whatever.
Love is love.
Now, you also then moved on to NYPD Blue, which we mentioned, and tell me about that role. I didn't see it, so I'm not familiar with your character or who you played in it. So tell me about NYPD Blue.
Really fantastic show, and an opportunity to work with Stephen Bochco and David Milch, both geniuses in the industry, and wonderful actors. I mean, Dennis Franz, Kim Delaney, Jimmy Smits. It was a really extraordinary ensemble show to be on. And it was as realistic as a show comes. It was very important to the producers of the show that they get it just right, in terms of what is a cop's life like. So they would flag detectives, homicide detectives out for shows to advise on the show and how things would be done. And also, I was flown to New York to spend a week with Queen's Homicide. So I wrote with Queen's Homicide. I drank with Queen's Homicide. I shot pool with them. It got to the point where we would walk into a squad room, and I would just walk in the door, and I was with another detective, and, we'd see the sergeant at the front desk and just go right up the stairs, and they all thought I was a cop. To the point, they found that I was so convincing as a cop that one day when we went to the morgue, they just all thought I was a police officer. So there was all kinds of mortgage things that go on there. Like nothing weird or anything, but, dead bodies, autopsies. They opened a couple of drawers, showed me a person, what they call a floater, someone who's found in the river or in water.
Yeah.
And, there were a couple of people at the morgue that apologized to me because they said, we thought you were a detective. We're so sorry. Oh my gosh. And,
How did it make you feel seeing a dead body?
There's nothing to fear from the dead.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We're all going to end up there. So
that's true. And
it's the living that scare me, Jay.
Yeah.
Not the dead.
Of course, in between Babylon 5 and NYPD Blue, there was Jag. What was your character on Jag?
My character was a sexually harassing lieutenant commander who tried to chase my co-star around and get in bed with him for most every episode. Yeah, but I was his commanding officer. So there was a whole kind of military lingo about sexual harassment, which was, yellow light commander, red light commander kind of stuff. But it was Judge Advocate General's office, as though attorneys actually run around and solve crimes and things like that. But it was a very interesting show.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of reviewing here while I have you here. 5 episodes of 24, and 4 episodes of Hero's Destiny. You did an episode of Criminal Minds. Apparently, the last thing you did was in 2016 for Quarry. When did you switch over and become an anchor on CNN?
Oh, that was back in 2000. So I went from NYPD Blue to CBS News in Albuquerque, New Mexico for a year as a breaking news reporter, then to CNN after that. And then headed back to Los Angeles, which is when I did 24. And I had a couple more, really interesting jobs. But 2016 was when I had just decided I'd had enough of Los Angeles. And I had been looking around.
Yeah.
I'd been looking around for some years and for 4 years to be exact after Sandy Hook. After Sandy Hook and, 19 kindergartners and first graders got shot, and I think it was 4 or 5 teachers as well. I thought, you know what? Nothing's going to change here. I got to go.
Yeah.
So I started looking. I looked at Portugal, at Spain, France, Italy, Mexico, Guatemala, Peru, Argentina, I didn't really like. I'd been there before. Brazil, I didn't want to live there. And Costa Rica. So it took me about a year, and I came down to Puerto Vallarta in spring of 2017. And I wasn't, active. I mean, I was looking around. I figured I'll just keep traveling and go into places and see if something feels right or if it feels like the right situation. So I'd already been a real estate agent in Los Angeles for 12 years at that point in time. And I came on vacation with my 2 sons to Puerto Vallarta. And the first time I had been here was 1983. And it was just a little tiny fishing village. But I always loved it and I always thought I would come back. And I came back a few times before I had kids. And then after that, it started doing different kind of travel than what I had done with what I had done when I was single. But came down for a 2-week vacation, looked around at Vallarta. This city has grown a lot, got about 250,000 people now. But it's beautiful, and it was the perfect juxtaposition for me of ocean, jungle, and mountains. And there was also a lot of new development construction going on. So I thought, you know what? I don't have to wait until I retire. I can just come down here right now. So I went back to LA. Sold everything up, shut everything down, and moved down here August 31st of 2017.
Wow. Compared to America, what's the economy like down there?
In Mexico?
Yes.
Mexico is booming right now. It's attracting a lot of international investment. There's a fantastic workforce here. Cost of living is much lower. The cost of employing people is much lower. So it's attracting a lot of industry. There's very skilled labor here. Aside from the U.S., India, and China, Mexico cranks out an extraordinary amount of skilled engineers in all fields. Medicine is spectacular here. Mexico never has. I mean, if you need an MRI here, you get an MRI tomorrow. If you need a procedure, you get it next week at the latest. There are no shortages of doctors because Mexico sends its young people to medical school at very low cost. And what they have to do at the end of med school is do a year of public service. So I love the economy. I love the people. I love the culture, the food. The medical care is extraordinary. And for me, as I'm getting older, I mean, it becomes more of an issue.
Yeah.
You start thinking, okay, well, how am I going to handle this if it comes along? So, yeah, I mean, I love my life here. It's a beautiful country and historically rich, thousands of years of history. And it's home for me.
Yeah. How's your Spanish? Is it good?
Muy bien, sí. Estudié hoy para 2 horas en pretérito. I mean, I'm still studying.
Yeah.
I was getting discouraged about it. And then I talked to a friend of mine who I asked her, I said, how she's Mexican. And I said, how long did it take you to learn English? How long did you study for? And she thought about it for a minute and she said, 9 years. So it's just very different. I mean, so many different verb tenses and the fact that it changes. And, people said to me, oh, Spanish is easy. You'll have it. No, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, if I say, for instance, I can, you can, he or she can, we can, they can. In Spanish, that's puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, and pueden. And then it changes for each, that's present, then future, then past, then used to be past, then conditional, then, so it takes a while. And I mean, sometimes I understand more. Some days I understand more than others. And much of it is dependent upon the speaker, how quickly people speak. But I read contracts in Spanish, so my reading and writing are a lot better than my speaking.
Wow. And
Yeah.
do you think that English or Spanish is more complicated?
Well, I grew up speaking English, so,
It's natural.
to me, grammatically, I think Spanish is more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful language, too.
Yeah. Yeah. How much of Mexico have you explored since you've been there? Have you been to the pyramids?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, I started out with Chichen Itza, which is, it's a big touristy spot, but still extraordinary by any measure of extraordinary. The actual park there, Chichen Itza, is only 1% of what the size of the city used to be. So they're all up and down the Yucatan coastline. There are ruins that are not as well traveled. And then cenotes, which I love as well. The ice cold, plunging into the ice cold water from the meteor strikes millennia ago. So, there I've spent a lot of time in Mexico City. I spent time in Guadalajara, San Miguel de Allende, Guanajuato. I have not been to Oaxaca yet, and I really want to go to Oaxaca. And Morelos and Puebla. Querétaro, I have not spent any time in, so there's a lot for me to see still. I got here and hit the ground running and started working, and I brought my 12-year-old, my son was 12 at that time, with me, and so it was just like I could be living anywhere, except I was fortunate that I was living in a gorgeous place in Mexico.
Yeah.
But I just hit the ground running, and it was like school, work, and just the usual drill. Laundry on weekends, grocery shopping, but in paradise.
Oaxacan food is very good. In fact, it was the first time in Mexico that I ever ate grasshoppers, and that was an experience. But they put so much sauce and stuff on them, you could hardly even taste that it was a grasshopper.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Plenty of spice.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you were offered a big role in a big movie, would you come back to America and do the movie, or would you want to stay where you're at and what you're doing now?
Well, first of all, that's never going to happen. Nobody's going to offer me a big movie.
You never know. You never know.
People don't. You got to want it to stay in that business. And after 30 years, I didn't want it anymore. I wanted something new with my life. I wanted to enjoy. I wanted the life that I have now, which is, it's hard to describe. It's such a beautiful, respectful, courteous country. So that sometimes when I go back to the United States, I get a little butthurt because people seem abrupt and rude to me because I'm really accustomed now to living in a very polite culture where if you walk down the street and you're passing by someone, it's buenos dias or buenas tardes or buenas noches. Right? You don't just walk by and see through people. So, and there's an ease to life here that I never felt when I was in Los Angeles. And even though I have a busy schedule and I still work full time, I never feel that I'm rushing. I don't feel stressed. I don't feel like I'm on the kind of treadmill that I felt like in the United States. And of course, things in the U.S. have gotten so incredibly expensive too. So
and when when we as Americans hear anything in the news about Mexico, it's either cartels or there was an earthquake. And
Yeah.
so we have this kind of idea, I think, in America that it's dangerous down there. Do you think it's dangerous?
No more than I think the United States is dangerous.
Yeah.
Actually, I think probably the US is more dangerous because there's so many guns.
Yeah.
And here, there's only one gun store in Mexico. There's one, and it's near Mexico City, and it's on a military base. And you can get a gun here if you want a gun here.
Yeah.
Most of the guns that end up on Mexico, unfortunately, have to do with the drug trade.
Right.
And the most dangerous spots in Mexico are all along the U.S. border. And another unfortunate fact is that those guns come from the United States. So, and as far as the drug trade is concerned, it's like it's a supply and demand business like any other business. And unfortunately, there's a lot of demand in the U.S. But no, I mean, look, I certainly wouldn't be, walking through the south side of Chicago at night. And, there are places in Mexico where I'm not going to do that either. But Vallarta is very safe. It's one of the safest cities in Mexico. Merida is very safe. Mexico City has got its own problems with, pickpockets and things like that. But it's a metropolitan area of 30 million people. So you have big city problems anytime you have a big city.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst place I've ever been for pickpockets was Paris. So, I mean, it's all relative.
Yeah. How often do you get back to the United States, and what brings you here?
Yeah, I don't. It's a great big world. I lived in the United States all my life for 57 years, except for, Australia when I was a kid. And to me, it's a great, big, beautiful world out there. And all I have to do is fly to Mexico City, and I can go anywhere I want to go. So, yeah, no, I've seen enough of the U.S., and now it's time to explore more of the world.
Yeah. And is that something you plan to do? Is more exploring?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think for right now, I'm going to stay on in the Americas. I think, Mexico, Central America, South America for now. Every time I look at pictures of people traveling in Europe, it gives me hives. It just looks like massive crowds everywhere. Mm-hmm. So there were all these places that I lived in Europe. I lived in London. I lived in Dublin. I lived in Rome. I lived in Paris for a while, and and also in a couple of places in the countryside. So all these places I remember from my youth being just really extraordinary are just hordes of crowds now, and I don't feel compelled to go explore any of that.
Yeah.
I would love to go to Turkey. I would love to go to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few things on my radar, but not right now. I mean, I'm very involved with work with new construction projects and big land development projects, and so that's what I'm doing right now. My youngest kid just moved out to go. He went back to the States, to Salt Lake City, Utah, where he has friends. So for the first time in 31 years, I have no kid at home. So this is my time now.
Yeah. This is your time to grow.
It's my time to grow, explore, and I'm not tied to a school schedule or making dinner every night. So it's been very interesting rediscovering myself post motherhood.
Right. Being on Babylon 5, a lot of the stars still do conventions. Are you asked to do conventions?
No, because I just kind of bowed out of them a while ago. I've got a kid, then I had a kid at home. Now I don't think anybody's interested, but no, it was a fantastic part of my life, but it's not really something I think about anymore. And I've moved on to other things. Yeah. I got out before I had to have my facelift, Jay. I was never going to be down for that.
Never going to be down for a facelift. Well, you did a facelift with your career. You're selling real estate, selling apartments and things like that in Mexico. And so tell me about how you prepare for and how you go through to present a building or a house to a customer.
Um, it's just like anything else you're selling in real estate. Generally, with new development, we're selling air.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, all the client has got to go on is, transparent financials, the track record of the developer, the contractor, the architect,
Mm-hmm.
and then prior builds.
Right.
So it's mostly we're selling with renders and sometimes with models.
Yeah.
But there have been people who, it was still the Wild West here in Mexico 20, 30 years ago. And there were people that lost money. But
Mm-hmm.
now, at this point in time, we deal with developers that have got a really strong track record
Uh-huh.
of buildings delivered on time that are of very good quality. So I don't have any problem
Yeah.
with presenting it.
Do you sell primarily to corporations, individuals? What?
Individuals,
Mm-hmm.
some are retirees, some are investors, but more and more we're seeing a lot of young families from the US and from Canada who come down with kids who are, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and put them into Mexican private school.
Uh-huh.
And because when you graduate school here, you have to speak 3 languages when you're in Mexican private school. So generally it's English, Spanish, and French will be the third, although there are some schools that offer German or Russian or Mandarin.
Uh-huh.
But private schools are very, very rigorous here.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the area you were describing it, jungle on one side, mountains and ocean. So the beauty of the area is also an attraction, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, November is when the whales start migrating here, and then all the birds come down during that time as well. Our weather is absolutely perfect. We're basically on the same latitude as Hawaii.
Mm.
So we have very similar weather. We have a monsoon season. Um, yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous here. I mean, on weekends, I go for waterfall hikes, and uh, there's a lot of outdoor activity to do: paddle boarding, swimming,
Yeah.
horseback riding.
Well,
Yeah,
take
it's
me along. Where would you? What areas would you recommend someone go to see the waterfalls and the kayaking and things like that? Could you be a guide for a moment and
no,
just take us through Mexico?
no, I don't want to be responsible for anybody.
Yeah.
I just got rid of my kid. I don't want to be responsible for anybody anymore. No, but I could turn you on to a great tour company here, that's for sure.
Uh huh. Yeah. Yeah.
And they handle all those fantastic things.
Yeah. Okay. Um, One other thing I wanted to ask you about is you had a stalker at one time. How did that make you feel, and where did that end up?
Uh, he did some time in jail. Not a pleasant part of my life. Not something I really like to look back on.
Mm. Of course not. Of course not. But I wanted, excuse me, I got the coughs there. I wanted to at least touch on it to see if you wanted to talk about it. Um, so, the media there in Mexico compared to America, what's it like?
Very different, although, honestly, I don't spend much time watching TV.
Yeah.
I catch a few glimpses of it at the gym in the morning,
Yeah.
and I'll see the local news, stuff like that. I pay attention to international events. Of course, I'm paying attention to the U.S. elections right now. I watched a little bit of the Olympics, but honestly, my TV is used primarily for music.
Yeah.
I spent 30 years in film and television, so I don't watch much anymore.
Well, I was asking you because you were an anchor on CNN, and
Uh-huh.
you have a journalist degree. So, just comparing media elsewhere in the world and the United States, and your thoughts on that.
I think they're probably similar worldwide. It's I mean, presentation can be slightly different. Certainly, when you're in a Latin American country, the women are very beautiful and voluptuous and wear shorter skirts. But
Right.
other than that, I mean, it's basically the same job. I mean, one would hope,
Hmm.
and that job is to, find good stories and tell them well.
Yeah.
Good stories about people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the media here, we're divided, and there's a left
Yeah,
and a right, and there doesn't seem to be much middle of the road, which is what we really need, is more of that. And so
absolutely.
I was hoping Mexico probably is a little more middle of the road.
Well, in many ways, I would say it is. Women certainly serve a larger part of government here. And we now have a female president in Claudia Sheinbaum.
Hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how that is going forward. Her degree is environmental science. I can't be more specific than that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I have not paid a lot of attention to Mexican politics because as a guest in this country, some people call themselves expats. I call myself an immigrant because it wasn't that I was running away from something. I was running to a different experience here in
Right.
Mexico. But I've got all the rights of any Mexican citizen. However, not allowed to protest or to vote, and I can't speak negatively about the Mexican government. So that's why I stay out of politics, and I stay out of politics in general these
Yeah.
days anyway. It's just become too divisive.
Yeah. You have
Speaking of U.S. politics, yeah.
you have a female president now. Do you see that as a good thing? And do you think that
Sure,
we're
why
going to
not?
end up with a female president?
Well, I don't know who we're going to end up with in the United States, but yeah, certainly women should have more of a hand in politics. Men have had a long time to screw it up on their own, and it's
Yeah.
time to get out of the way and let some women try their hand. But on the and then too, I would just like to see age limits on people who are serving. It's just gotten ridiculous at this point.
Right.
We
Right.
need new voices. We need young blood in our countries, to deal with the issues that we're dealing with right now. And a
Yeah.
lot of that is immigration, but the immigration issue is tied in with the climate issue. And if we don't get the climate piece right, we can't fix anything else. People
Exactly.
will continue to come to the border,
Right.
and
It's
you
all
can't make a
intertwined.
livelihood anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all in. Look, whether you have nationalist leanings or not, the fact of the matter is we're all sharing this same little blue ball tumbling around in the universe, and we got to do it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. I did want to ask you also, you were married to Jerry Dole, and
Yes,
I
I
met him
was.
once.
Mhm.
And great guy, great guy. And just your thoughts on how he was, his character, and who he was.
Oh, Jerry, he was great as Garibaldi. People loved it. He was a natural. He hadn't been an actor before that show. I mean, or for a very short period of time only.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, uh, I thought he did a terrific job.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
certainly had a solid following. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, s- uh, my brain is running around with all kinds of questions, and yet I can't seem to settle on any one thing. I don't know if I want to go back to your Hollywood career, talk more about your real estate career. What makes you very, very happy? Tell me.
I've been telling you, Mexico is what makes me really, really happy. This just being here and my life here, and you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
honestly, I don't have a whole lot more I can tell you. I think we had a capsule of my life in like 40 minutes.
Yeah, I think we have. So, but if somebody did want to go back and did want to have an autograph from Andrea Thompson or something like that, do you have memorabilia that you sell to people? And where
You
would
know,
they get it?
Pat Tallman has been handling that for a long time for the Babylon 5 crew
Hmm.
or cast. But she's out having her own life adventure right now,
Yeah,
traveling around the world with her husband. She does a lot of really, but I mean, I hear from her every once in a while, and she'll have requests for autographs, and Pat's gracious enough to take care of that.
all right, all right. And you're on? Are you on? You're on Instagram and on Facebook. Are you there as yourself or
Yeah,
as your real estate agency?
both.
Both. So if someone wanted to find you, they can find you, and they could ask you a question if they wanted to. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for being my guest. I have thoroughly enjoyed this show, and I really feel like even though we covered the gauntlet of everything, there's still 1,000 questions I'd like to ask you. Maybe some of them would be more not on an interview, but just talk. But I love
Well, you
it.
know how to message me, dude. You know,
Yeah,
we've been talking for years.
we've been talking for years. But I was so proud. I thought maybe when I asked you to do the interview, I thought she's probably going to decline because she has left this world behind, that that Hollywood
Yeah.
world behind. And you were so enthusiastic, and I thought to
Well,
myself,
I'm
oh
enthusiastic about you, and I'm enthusiastic about what you do. So
yeah,
that's why I was happy to jump in and participate.
I'm so proud to have you, and I want you to take care of yourself in Mexico, okay?
Thank you. You take care too, Jay.
Thank you.
Goodbye.